listening to Planet Vero Radio. I am Cindy Schwartz. This is the Patient Partners Show. I've got my co-host Jeannie Roller with me on Skype from Indiana. We are broadcast on iHeartMedia, and this show is also on Spreaker as a podcast. So, Jeannie, we decided today we're going to talk about PTSD and how it affects just your average, normal, everyday person that goes in for medical care. And the reason I brought the topic up was because in my reading group, my local reading group, book club, is a nonfiction book club, and we just finished reading a book called Between Two Kingdoms, and it is about a young girl, I think she's 23 years old, that was diagnosed with this rare form of leukemia. And in the book, it states that she does have PTSD from the diagnosis and from the chemotherapy and different treatment and stuff that went on in her whole procedures and stuff. And so my book club members, one of them brought up that as a topic, saying, I have never heard of any medical patient whatsoever getting PTSD, because everyone just assumes that it goes along with military, with rape victims, and with different, incest and different things like that, and never in the medical community. And I was like, wow, that's eye-opening to me, because you and I have been talking about this since it happened to us, and we know that it's true. And I said to her, well, a lot of the medical community people, and this is my own experience, have said to me and other people that I know, you must have come in with underlying conditions for our treatment, our standard lung cancer treatment, to have caused PTSD with you. So they kind of, in my instance, schlepped it under the rug, saying, well, this is on you, because a normal or average person wouldn't have gotten PTSD with just our regular treatment for lung cancer. So that was my own personal history. And you have a different story, and so we need to talk about this, because people need to know that this does happen.
Right. Well, for those of you who do not know, my husband was both medically assaulted, meaning that he was given drugs that he had refused, and he was had a procedure done on him that he also had refused. And in addition to that, he was sexually assaulted, and I saw part of it. So it was very traumatic for both of us. For a long time, neither of us realized what was going on with us, because we had never heard of medical PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so you and I talked before we recorded this podcast, the show, and said we both thought we were alone in this, because how in the world do you even rationalize this? Rationalize the treatment, and then rationalize the physical and mental symptoms that are just barrage you every second of every day thereafter, when you saw a person in the medical community who you blindly trust, which is what we should do. I mean, we're there for help. These people are supposed to help us. And this is what happens. And we find ourselves in this spiral, and then try to get therapy, because most people haven't even heard of this. Now, I've had people say to me that a lot of therapists don't know about medical PTSD. I don't know the statistics on that. I know that the therapy people that I sought knew absolutely what had happened to me. And also the therapist that I went to said, I have 5 to 6 other patients weekly, monthly, that are experiencing the same thing you are from medical mistreatment.
Right. And I will say that we didn't seek treatment because we have no trust in the medical community. So we weren't going to go back to the very same people that harmed us.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's your choice. I mean, I decided that in my own personal instance, I decided that the therapist that I sought wasn't the person that did this to me. So I personally didn't group them together. I know the people that were at the Orlando hospital that I went to, this happened to me. I certainly wouldn't go near that group of people again, or that facility again. But I sought help because my mind was so devastated knowing that a doctor and his staff did this to me.
Well, in our instance, there was a social worker who took part in sexual abuse of my husband. So there was a little more to it than that. So he had already been betrayed by the mental health community. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm being the devil's advocate. I mean, everybody gets their choice. I mean, some people go to acupuncture, some people, do meditation, some people have herbal supplements, some people, we all have our own way that we're going to deal with this, with the trauma and whatever. But our message is, from personal experience, we know that this happens.
right.
We know that
Right.
this happens. And I was shocked that the people in my book club had not heard a thing about this whatsoever. And like I said, in instance, the explanation from the Orlando administration was, you obviously came in damaged, and that's why you had this severe reaction to what our quote unquote normal treatment for this procedure was.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I'm shocked that I really didn't realize it to start with either, that that's what had happened as a result of the medical abuse. Because, PTSD has been talked about for years,
right.
but I've never heard it used as a what do you
A
what's the word I'm looking-
diagnosis and medical stuff?
as a side effect of medical treatment. Yeah.
Right. Well, because we think that it's always military. We think it's rape victims, that those are, these heinous crimes. Well, I'm here to say, excuse me, when your doctor is doing that to you, when your doctor's staff is doing these atrocities to you, that's the trauma. That's the heinous care. It is. Because the way we were treated, your husband and I, there is no informed consent paper that we ever saw that said this was what was going to happen to you. You were going to be given drugs, myself included, like your husband. I told them the reactions I had to these drugs. They pumped them into me anyway. And I did ask other doctors and therapists, can you separate the drug reaction that I had, the severe reaction to these drugs, and the horror from the mind-numbing PTSD and all of that? And they said, you definitely have PTSD. It's not the drugs that did that. The drugs have their other side effects, but this is definitely PTSD from the horror treatment. So therapists know this stuff. Maybe not every therapist, but they do know this stuff, and they can figure it out because they give you tests.
Right.
They ask you questions, they give you questionnaires, and they ask you that. I mean, there's apps on phones that you can go to when you're experiencing these symptoms, because Jeannie, it's all of a sudden there's a flashback, there's a trigger. You don't know when that's going to happen.
No, you don't. You just know to avoid certain things and hope that cuts down on the amount of episodes.
Yeah, one of the biggest things, too, is to talk about it like we're doing now, too, because you want to get it out in the open, and you don't want it to happen to anyone else, and you want to try to alleviate your own symptoms, which are so severe. They are.
Right. Sometimes they're just crippling. I mean,
absolutely.
There are days that they're just absolutely crippling.
Mm-hmm. There are. And you don't know, none of us do, that have suffered PTSD know when what these triggers are going to be. I mean, everyone's heard, for the most part, the one, when you hear a backfire on a car, blah, 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 that's going to be like gunfire or whatever. But when you see a white coat, when you have to go to another medical procedure and you see the lineup of people coming in and they're like coming at you, that's a trigger right there to a lot of people that have been medically damaged with PTSD. So there's all kinds of one. And how do you get back into the medical system if you want to seek care when you've had this stuff happen? It's tough. It really is.
Right. I know my husband, he cannot be in any kind of medical setting alone with any female health provider. He cannot. I mean, that just sends him over the edge.
Right.
And, his blood pressure will shoot way up high because of that. And it's not that these people are going to harm him, most likely, but it's because he suffered harm from someone that he didn't expect to be harmed by.
Right, exactly. That's the bottom line right there. We trust, and we should be able to blindly trust a doctor that is supposed to help us. I want to say a quick thank you to Misty Roberts. We've got a couple of seconds left. She's at patientmodesty.org. She's also on Facebook at Medical Patient Modesty. Jeannie Roller, you're on Twitter at Rights for Patients. We talk about this. We have conversations about this all the time. If anyone wants to get a hold of us, please reach out to patientmodesty.org, and Misty Roberts is one of our partners. She'll get a hold of us. And we're going to talk about this for the next couple of segments because it's just so horrific and it needs to be talked about. Thanks for listening to Planet Vero Radio. Please stay tuned.